The judge asked Pam to remove the Bible, but Pam showed him the power of the law. The morning sun barely peeked through the tall courthouse windows as Pam Bondi entered the courtroom. It was just another day, another case, but today something felt different. She walked in with a purposeful stride, briefcase in hand, and a leather-bound Bible tucked securely under her arm. The room buzzed with the usual pretrial chatter, but as Pam took her place at the defendant's table, her movements caused an unusual stir. Judge Alan Prescott, already seated at the bench, paused as his eyes fixed on the Bible Pam had brought with her. A flicker of disapproval passed over his face, his stern expression tightening. He cleared his throat, looking down at his paperwork before addressing her. "Ms. Bondi," he said sharply, his voice cutting through the low murmur in the courtroom, "I must remind you that this is a court of law, not a place for religious displays. Bringing a religious text into my courtroom is inappropriate, and I must ask you to remove it immediately." Pam didn't blink. She'd been here before, facing opposition from a judge who thought they could impose personal beliefs in a place meant to uphold the law. But this was different. Judge Prescott wasn't just questioning her attire. He was questioning her right to carry a symbol of her faith into the very institution that was supposed to protect her freedoms. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady and calm, "this Bible is no different than the legal books you rely on every day to make your decisions. It is a source of strength, a guide, just as those books are guides to the law." The judge's face reddened, and he leaned forward, his fingers tapping impatiently on the bench. "I'm not here for philosophical debates, Ms. Bondi. Remove it, or I'll have no choice but to fine you for disrupting courtroom decorum." Pam felt the weight of the room shift. The tension was palpable. She could sense the other lawyers, the clients, and even the clerk, all watching to see how she would respond. But Pam wasn't about to back down. She folded her arms across her chest and spoke, her tone unwavering. "Your Honor, I respect this courtroom, and I respect your position. But this book, like my cross or wedding ring, is part of who I am. I'm not here to impose my beliefs on anyone, but I will not be silenced for carrying a book that represents my faith." The room fell silent. Judge Prescott stared at her for a moment, his expression a mixture of frustration and disbelief. Pam could feel the eyes of the entire room on her, but she stood firm. This wasn't about a book or about her beliefs. It was about the very principles of freedom and the First Amendment that governed the land. The judge sighed heavily, his voice growing colder. "I warned you, Ms. Bondi. You're in contempt of my courtroom. If you continue to insist on bringing this Bible in, I will fine you. And don't think I won't follow through." Pam remained unfazed. "Your Honor, I've been practicing law for over 2 decades. I've been in countless courtrooms across this country, and I've never been told I couldn't bring something as personal as a book of faith with me into the courtroom." Judge Prescott's grip on the gavel tightened, his jaw set in stone. "The law is clear, Ms. Bondi. There's no place for personal religious items in my court. If you don't remove it, I'll issue a fine immediately." Without hesitation, Pam pulled a small, legal pad from her briefcase and scribbled something down. "I'll be filing an objection to this," she said, her voice cutting through the judge's threats. "And I'll be putting my argument on the record." A murmur spread across the room, but Pam ignored it. She wasn't about to let one man's interpretation of the law intimidate her. As she stood to face him, her voice rang out, steady and clear. "The First Amendment protects my right to express my religious beliefs, and that includes bringing my Bible into this courtroom. If this court believes I am in contempt for exercising that right, then we will take it to a higher authority." Judge Prescott scoffed, his eyes narrowing. "I've had enough of this, Ms. Bondi. You're out of line." But Pam didn't flinch. "So be it. I'll take the fine. But I will not be silenced." The tension in the courtroom was unbearable. Pam could feel the weight of the moment, the eyes of every person in the room on her. But this wasn't just about her, it was about something much bigger. It was about freedom, about ensuring that no one could use their position of power to strip away the rights that defined what it meant to be an American. "Your Honor," Pam said, her voice firm, "you claim that my Bible disrupts the neutrality of the courtroom. But let's examine the law, shall we?" She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a stack of legal documents. In the case of West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943, the Supreme Court ruled that individuals do not lose their constitutional rights when they enter a government institution. And this includes religious expression. Judge Prescott's eyes narrowed further. Pam wasn't just defending her right to carry a Bible. She was making a constitutional argument that could resonate far beyond this courtroom. She continued, in Tinker versus Des Moines, 1969, the court ruled that students didn't shed their First Amendment rights when they walked into a school, and this principle applies here as well. My right to carry a Bible into this courtroom is no different than any other personal item that does not disrupt proceedings. The judge sat back in his chair, clearly uneasy. He had been cornered, and he knew it. Pam wasn't just fighting for a personal victory. She was fighting to uphold a principle that was foundational to American democracy. Your Honor, she concluded, you can issue the fine, but I will appeal it. And when this case reaches a higher court, I guarantee you it will make headlines. The precedent we set today will impact the rights of every American who enters a courtroom in the future. A long pause stretched across the room as Judge Prescott sat in silence. The pressure was mounting, and for the first time, it seemed as though the balance of power was shifting. Finally, the judge let out a heavy sigh, his shoulders slumping as if he had been defeated by the very rules he had once thought he could control. Fine, he muttered, barely audible. The fine is rescinded. But you're on notice, Ms. Bondi. Pam stood tall, her Bible still in her hands. She hadn't just won the battle today. She had sent a message, not just to Judge Prescott, but to every person in the courtroom and to anyone who might ever find themselves up against an overreaching authority. The fight for freedom wasn't over. It had just begun.